Start with one thing. Find one win that you can win at, however small that is. I love that you brought up ultra running, and I know you did that 100-miler, and I've done a few different ultras. I haven't, done as much as that. I've paced my brother in 100, and there always comes a point where, it's like, how far is that aid station? Like, what? And it seems so daunting, and you don't know how you're even going to come. You got another 20 miles to go, and you're like, how do you comprehend that? And what's always gotten me through it is just, you break it up. Like, you got to say, okay, one step at a time. And that's something that I've always repeated in my head. You just take one step forward. Okay, what's this next step forward? And that's honestly, you start small with those little steps, and that's how you build momentum. That's how you're going to start to build energy and get you through.
Welcome to the Brian Green Show. Thank you all for being on the show today. I'm really excited to introduce my guest, Jentz Painter. Jentz and I go way back. We were both athletes at Utah State, and Jentz now is an entrepreneur. He founded a fitness coaching business, and he specifically helps busy dads with helping them get strong and fit without sacrificing family time. Jentz, I look up to Jentz a lot. He's a family man. He has 3 kids. And Jentz, I'm just super thankful that you'd be on my show today. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing awesome, Brian. I appreciate you letting me join you today and rekindle this fire we once had.
Yeah. Well, I know we briefly talked about this, but I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have today, and I don't know if you know this, but I got back from my mission on a Saturday, and in my mission, I made the decision to come back to Utah State to be a grad assistant. And I came back on a Saturday, and school started on a Monday, and my parents lived in Kaysville at the time, and I had nowhere to live. And so I got to school on a Monday. I slept on a couch with my brother. And then Wild Bill, I don't know if you remember Wild Bill, or you were probably in high school when I was playing hoops, but he was a really well-known part of the, guy, part of the herd, and helped us win a lot of games. He's like, hey, BG, why don't you come stay over at the house? And so I lived with him for a couple weeks. And then finally, someone that we both know, Braden Stembridge, shout out to Braden, was like, hey, you need to meet Jentz. And so I just want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to live with you for that year. And I just love getting to know you, man. And it's really exciting, having you on this podcast. I think where I want to start is when you look back on your life and you think about the success you had at Utah State, and now that you're having it as an entrepreneur, like what would you say you're most grateful for? And who or what has influenced you the most in your life to get you kind of where you're at today?
Yeah.
And maybe we can just start there.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, there's so many things that happened that could have changed my trajectory. I came off of my mission, and I played at Utah State my freshman year as a redshirt, but then during my mission, the whole the football coaching staff changed completely. So I basically had to get recruited again to have a spot at Utah State to come on, and I was a preferred walk-on. Was a different mindset coming in off my mission. Wanted to find a wife, right? Get my schooling done, start to become a provider. And so having that obstacle of playing football, with my own money and my own time, and still trying to, become that provider, it was tricky. I felt like what I learned when I was on my mission was you had to show up every day being grateful for what you've been given, regardless of what it is. I served my mission in Russia. 9 out of the 12 months, it was snowy, cold, and I felt like what got me through those 2 years was just waking up, being grateful for what I've been given, and just giving the best that I can each day. And I felt like that's what I took home off of my mission. And so playing football, doing school, I didn't know what was going to happen of it. I couldn't tell, but I just kept showing up and just trying to do my best of what I could do. So eventually I earned a scholarship, and throughout that process, I didn't do it by myself. And I remember looking back, I wanted to quit. There came a point where I didn't feel like football was going to be I didn't see myself going to the NFL. I didn't see it getting it to that next level. And I was doing it on my own dime. And so I remember calling my dad and just being like, I feel like there's better things out for me. And I remember him just telling me like, this, don't quit. You're not a quitter. That's not what you do. And stick it out and do what you said you were going to do, and follow through with your commitment. And I trusted him like completely 100%. So I attribute a lot of that success of during that time of my life to my dad. Like he was one that was a solid rock throughout it all that just kept me going and kind of painted that picture. And so now as an entrepreneur doing my own business, like it's that same mindset is you committed to this. There's going to be storms, but this is what you committed to. Now you got to follow through. And that's what's been proven success. Now I'm 34 and still saying the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we could go down a rabbit hole of what it was like to live in Russia. Obviously, what you mentioned earlier, you learned a lot from that mission. And, your dad and what he said. Walk me through, like, I'm just curious, when you were a walk-on and you were putting in that work, what was that feeling like when you got the announcement or the news that you were able to earn a scholarship? And like, just what was that like? And I don't know, any thoughts around that feeling?
Well, honestly, like I had played the year. It was after spring ball, and I told the coach, hey, like I'm done. And I remember Coach Wells telling me, he's like, you had a great spring ball, and if we don't have scholarships right now, but if you keep doing what you're doing, the end of this year you're going to have a scholarship. And I played in all, I don't know, it was what, 12 11 games, however many we played that season, and I played every single game and didn't hear a thing as far as what was coming down the road. And so we were all the way to our bowl game. And I, at this point, was like, well, that's it. Like, I can't keep doing this without being able to provide for myself and do this on the side. And so they pulled me in, and it was a big team meeting, right? And it was just basically, we were going to go through the plays, the strategy. And then they, said, we got an announcement to make. We got some guys going on scholarship, and just called my name. And at first I was blindsided, like handle well, like takes me a minute to adjust to the plan. But I mean, it was a flood of emotions. Once it did hit, it was just like, man, it's hard work. It pays off. And that's at the core of it all.
Yeah. And so you have a great career. I mean, Utah State, great football team. If I'm not mistaken, Coach Wells goes on to coach at a larger university, right? I can't remember. Where did he go? Did he go to
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech? Yeah. So obviously you were a part of a big team or a successful team. Walk me through, like, after college, what, you mentioned earlier, you wanted to get married and be able to provide. It seems to me like there was like a journey between starting your business today and graduating Utah State. And I'm curious if you can walk me through what that journey was and what were some learnings or challenges or things that you could share about that time of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of, I'll go back to when I first got introduced to football. Like, I wasn't meant to play football. I felt like if I was the smallest kid in all my grade classes. Like, I was the runt of the litter, as you can say. But I always had friends that played football. Like, I was playing soccer. I was good at it. My mom didn't ever sign the papers to play football, but all my friends, all the cool kids, were playing football. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I mean, time and time again, I kept on hearing, like, you're too small, you're too short, like, football's not for you. And that lasted basically until I was forever when I was playing. Time and time again, I just had to prove myself. And it's kind of what kind of drove me to figure it out. And so, when I weighed in at 155 at Utah State, like, I was super small, but I kept wanting to figure this thing out. So I had to learn quickly how to build muscle, how to figure out nutrition so that I could be successful and apply that onto the field. And that was the biggest kind of gateway or highway to get me to see success on the field. Was I had to figure out how to build muscle in the weight room and put on size. And so that's what I learned. And I gained strength. And that's where I found a lot of success in my own self. And so as I went through college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after. And I got my degree in exercise science because it's just what I know, because I had to figure it out. But I just always figured, like, oh, unless you're working ridiculous hours in a gym and the reward's not quite what it is of what you're putting in, then I got to figure something else out. So I entered, I applied for graduate school to go into healthcare administration because I figured that fit well with what my passion was, is to help people improve the human condition and just help people, be healthy. But as I got into healthcare and I graduated from my program, all I could see was unhealthy people in a bad spot trying to get back on their feet. Where to me, my real passion was getting people before they even had that issue. So helping people figure out their health so they didn't have to go through these pains of what they would experience going to, you know, the hospital, the medical care as we know it today. So I mean, I always was driven, and as I was going through school, I did sales and I went into hospital administration, and then I worked in insurance, and then I eventually went into we were a mobile anesthesia clinic where we were basically selling anesthesia to dental offices and things like that. But always my passion was training people. So I always was training people on the side. I was building out programs, with Excel sheets and sending them to people for $50, online just to make some money on the side. And then that kind of, as I started to see the social media, I didn't want anything to do with it, but then I started to see the platform that it gave people like myself that could make a name for themselves and really help people in a specific area. And I started to really hone in on that, and just really show what I was doing. It was nothing new or nothing that I had to fake. It was just what I did, and I had to put it on camera. It wasn't the most comfortable, but then slowly that built, and I hit a point in my last job where they were going through restructuring. They were a startup, and they were letting us, the whole sales force, off. And so I had my coaching business built up enough where I could just transition. So I know it's a lot, but
Dude,
that's kind of
no, that's so cool. Well, I'm curious. So you were 155 when you started Utah State, or like when you were a senior? So you started at 155. How much, when you kind of learned about building muscle and nutrition, what were you at when you graduated Utah State? And now what are you at? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I was 180 my senior year. So I gained, you know, um, a bit of weight during that time and put on mass, but
30
maintaining a
pounds, I
pretty
mean,
lean
35
physique.
pounds.
Or 25.
And what are you at now?
So now I'm hanging around 174, up in my cardio quite a bit. Usually the sweet spot for me is about 174, 175.
So I'm curious, when you're in college and back when you and I played, there was no NIL money. The facilities were okay. Budgets and stipends were okay. But like when you think about the amount of calories, if you were to look back from 155 to 180, what was like this? What were the one or two variables that helped in that the most?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So number one was calories. Like I had to eat a lot because you know what it's like is when you're out putting that much energy, at practice and all the other things that you got to do. Like if you don't feel your body, you're outputting way more energy. So it's really easy to be in a deficit where you're actually losing weight. And so in football, we had to weigh in almost every day. There was a final weigh in on Friday. And if you didn't make it, like there was some pretty heavy consequences. So that obviously pushed me. At the end of the day, it was getting calories in, but I knew that for one, I felt better eating the right foods. And so I really focused on just eating, whole foods and eating a lot of it. So that was kind of my strategy.
Okay, so whole foods, eating a lot of it. Now, did you find yourself lifting more frequently throughout the week or needing to kind of wake up earlier or stay later? Like, are there some learnings that could be applied in business or really in anything of like, you did have to do not only eat more, but work out more?
No, I think the thing that I think separated me from, say, some other kids that maybe struggled with really building strength or building muscle during that time was when I showed up to that weight room, like blinders were on and it was full go, turn up the intensity, and it's pushing it as hard as I can on those sets. So when it was leg day, like I remember just like you get this lump in your throat knowing it's like, man, it's leg day. Like this is going to be rough because in my head, I know what intensity needed to come on that day. And so to me, it's the intensity that would separate people where it's like, it's not just like a zone 2 run. I think as runners, we get used to 80% of our runs are a zone 2 to just really build our running economy. And we have that volume. But when it comes to the weight room, it's totally different. There's no zone 2. It's just, you got that intensity and you go hard for that time that you are given. 45 minutes, 60 minutes in the weight room. And that's what's going to produce the most results.
So you get your master's and you kind of head down the path of like administration and sales. And it sounds to me what I'm hearing is you always had the one-on-one coaching side, but it was really the social media that enabled you to get your brand and your product or service out there, which kind of generated more leads.
Yeah.
I'm curious from your perspective, whether it's at that point in time in your life or today, being a married man, having kids, running a business, have you found a good balance from being a consumer of content and being distracted and like doom scrolling while creating content? Or how has social media like affected your life, good or bad, and how do you navigate that, and how can dads navigate that, man? Because I'm feeling like it's such a distracting thing, and I'm just curious, how do you approach that, because it has blessed your business so much?
Yeah. That was one of the reasons that deterred me from really going full in, like in the beginnings of it, just because I saw it as how much like it's just consuming content that didn't necessarily benefit me. It was just more entertainment and getting caught up in things that weren't purposeful to me. And so, but I had some, another online coach. Disputes are the ones that kind of like I was connected with through lifting and stuff, and they were able to really kind of open up my eyes of what's capable, right? So that's kind of what led me on to it. But then 100%, like social media is so dialed with what you are going to want to look at. So the second you open your phone, there's going to be something on there that is going to be ready to just take your attention. And that's what it is money is attention, right? That's the current
Mhm.
currency these days, is how much they can keep your attention. And so for me, knowing that in my head, yeah, there's times where I do get caught up in it, but I've learned that if I can just open up my Instagram and I click my icon, like my account, then now
Mhm.
I'm creating and I'm not consuming.
Mhm.
And I've had to, put some pieces in place to help me not be so caught up in setting up appointments and getting, connecting with people, all that. Like I have some resources in place to help me with that. So I don't have to be on it as much. Man, it's tough. To me, my biggest recommendation is when you go on there, like, don't have some boundaries around it. Know what you're there for,
Mhm.
know why you're going to do it. And if you're there to consume, have a time limit on it, because it's not all bad. Like I think there's a lot of good, inspiring things that you can find on it, but have a time limit on it. And then if you're there as a business, go there to create, not consume, and do that by just going straight to what you need to do.
So I'm curious, here's where my head's at, and I don't consider myself as an influencer by any means, but with this podcast and with LinkedIn, I've made the conscious decision to create, and I consume, but I try to create. And you do have to be vulnerable. It takes some confidence, it takes some awkwardness, it takes some like, should I be doing this? No one's even seeing it. And so my question to you is like, when you started creating content, was there ever a like, what advice would you give someone that might wanna start telling their story, and their story could bless someone, or they could actually monetize a service based on what their experiences is, and what kind of advice would you give someone that might be listening and feeling like, "Man, I could really be more of a creator, but I don't know if I'm good enough, or I don't know if my story is compelling enough." Like, what advice would you give that person?
Well, that's the thing is, with the fitness industry, you'll see a million fitness influencers on here is like promoting their business, right? So what would separate me from someone else in the fitness industry? Like there's always going to be someone more jacked, someone more ripped, faster, someone who can, has more clients, right? There's always going to be someone more. So what makes me different? And the cool thing about it is who you are as a person, that's your niche. Like that's your niche. And if you can hone in on that and figure out, okay, this is who I am. And a lot of times it does take like trial by error. Like I had a bunch, I've created a lot of content that didn't fit on brand. And it was maybe just because I saw somebody else do something and I mimicked it. Guess what? It didn't hit. But when I do things that are more personal to me and fit who I am as a dad and someone who shows up for their family, but also takes care of their health and wants to chase their passions. And when I can hone on those different attributes, like those are the ones that I feel really do well. So to me, you just find your authentic self, like understand who you are as a person, and then don't try to copycat, don't try to be somebody else that you're not, because it won't, you know, it won't hit like it will if it's just your own voice.
Love that, dude. And you've always been that to me. And it's really cool to see what you're doing. I'm curious, had you not been involved in a layoff, or had that reorg not happened at that job you were at, do you think, like, when that happened, were you pretty angry and frustrated at the world, and you didn't realize like the door that it opened to go full send on this, or did you actually see it as a blessing and it was like God was like telling you like, "Okay, gents, like now's your time to go." Like, walk me through the emotions of that, and would you be where you're at today if you didn't get laid off?
Yeah. I mean,
Or, you know.
yeah, no, it's a good question. And like I had a lot of self-doubt because I was starting to get some traction on social media. Like I had a buddy that told me like what was kind of down the pipeline as far as the restructuring of the business. So I had probably like 3 months, but I still doubted myself. I still didn't think like there's no way. Like I probably had 2,500 followers at the point at that time. And
Mhm.
that's not a lot. Like if you think about your funnel of being able to then take your income that you're used to having and then get it all, from social media, like that's a pretty big jump. But I could see the trend. I could see the trend going. And so it was a blessing 100% because I don't think if I would have been laid off or had that pressure, I would still be there and probably still be trying to work on the social media thing, trying to get it rolling, but I don't think it would have gone like it did. Like I was able, to double within the next month of what I was making the previous month, which it was pretty stagnant for those previous months. So it definitely was that analogy is like you burn the ships and go all in and that's what got things rolling. So the pressure definitely made it.
So cool. You know, Alicia, who you know, my wife, she always says constraint is the catalyst to creativity. And I look back on my life when I've been constrained or have been going through a lot of challenges that I didn't feel like I could overcome. It was actually when I grew the most and when doors maybe started opening. And it's cool seeing how you leveraging social media and your skill set has been able to help a lot of men. And so my question now is like, let's talk about dads. Let's talk about people like myself that have 4 kids. I'm 37. I'm trying to perform professionally. I'm trying to be present with my wife and kids. I'm trying to eat healthy, but it's hard. Like, what patterns are you seeing with your clients on like why they're in a, like, what have you learned the most about dads in our society that's influencing overweight, obesity, mental health?
Yeah.
Any initial thoughts on like what you're seeing?
Yeah, I see, I just look at the clients that I'm working with now, and a lot of them are previous athletes of some sense. Or, I had a guy who was training as, the special forces, and you think these guys, what, you know what you're doing. Like it's usually not a knowledge issue. What it comes down to is a structure and accountability issue. And so we get, before we get married, before we get a job, before we have all these other responsibilities that on the priority list are really high, we kind of get used to our health is at a good point. But then when these other responsibilities start weighing on us, that's where we don't have the structure and accountability we once had because we don't have as much time. We got six sick kids. We got a newborn that's up, you know, 5 hours in the night, and we're having to sacrifice sleep. And then we got to wake up at 5:30 to go to work. And then we're home and it's like the wife hands the kid to you and it's chaos. And so how do you then, show up for yourself and have this health that you wanted, that you've had. And like I said, it comes down to a structure and accountability issue. And if you can have a system in place where these habits, like, I always tell this, but it's like, think of it like when you were a kid. And if you'd be watching your favorite TV show and your mom would come in and say, Brian, it's time to go brush your teeth. And you'd be like, no, I'm good. Right. Like I'm comfortable, got my blanket on, like, don't bother me. But yet she would still show up and say, Ryan, it's time to go to bed, brush your teeth. And, if you're anything like me, like I'm 34, my mom doesn't live with me, but I brush my teeth morning and night, so I have these habits in place that are going to set me up for success. So as I get older, I know what to do. And so what it comes down to is having the right habits and having the structure to get you to where you want to go. And a lot of times it's having someone that's been there and done that to get you there. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah. And so I'm curious, like, how, when you sit down with a client initially, what frameworks or things have you learned to help build that structure? And what does that structure look like in your services? And then when you think about all of the habits required, and we need to change our habits. Someone told me recently it takes like 60 days to change a habit. Some people say it's 21 days, but like, what's the structure that you teach and what kind of habits are you trying to develop or reconnect in your coaching services?
yeah. So I would say, number one, you got to have some non-negotiables. The way that you can still show up for yourself, because I mean, let's be real, like you can show up better for others when you show up for yourself. So in a way, you have to be selfish, and you have to know that in your head is like by you being selfish, you can then be a better individual, a better parent, better example to your kids. And so you have to come to terms with that, right? But if you can set some non-negotiables of, okay, regardless of what situation I'm in, I can at least do these things, whether that's I can track my protein, right? Get enough protein in. Knowing that alone is going to help balance out the way you eat food and how much you're going to eat of that food. Okay. So protein, how much water are you going to drink in a day? Are you going to hit a minimum amount of steps? Or, I'm going to go to bed at a certain time. So you start to set some non-negotiables, and then you start to build the foundation, and you just start stacking wins, right? So when I'm looking at somebody that maybe everybody comes from a different level of fitness, and so they're not always going to be, some know the gym, some know fitness, some don't. And it all depends on what they're used to. With certain people, it's like putting, them learning to ride a bicycle or putting training wheels on. It's going to, I'm pushing them along saying, okay, we're going to start moving the body. Maybe it's doing some mobility work, getting used to doing some push-ups, and dedicating, 20 minutes a day to moving your body. Other people, it's like, okay, let's ramp up that intensity a bit. I can at least dedicate 45 minutes a day. There is going to be sacrifice. You got to have at least some time to do that. But, starting with the basics and then making sure that they can build on that and having that open dialogue. That's why the one-on coaching works, is because I can see how their body's responding. Are they falling off the mark? Are they staying consistent, with the things that they said they would do? And then we're refiguring the plan of what's going on. So it's different for everyone.
And during your coaching, on average, and it sounds like it depends on the client, but when you build the structure and you hold them accountable and there's the coaching aspect, like how long are you working with these individuals and what's been the most rewarding from coaching these dads
Yeah.
in your book of business?
Yeah. So, I mean, they gotta commit to at least 6 months. So I'm working with them at a minimum of 6 months, if not longer. And the whole goal of it is I want them to establish these habits that they can sustain well into their 40s or 50s, 60s, and understanding like there's seasons of life to this thing. There's going to be seasons where you have a lot of time, and there's seasons where you don't have that much time, and making sure you have, the right things in place. And that's where the joy comes from it, is because I work with clients that are in, the UK, that are in Texas, in Canada, like they're all over in the nation. And so I can't be there to go knock on their door and say, hey, let's get it. Let's get after it today. They have to execute on the plan, and they have to figure out how they're going to really put this into their life. And that's the cool part about it, is I can help them stay on track. I hold them accountable to what they agreed to do, and then they got to execute on it. And they end up coming, I have clients that tell me all the time, is like, now that I'm so dialed on my health, like I'm way more dialed in business because I'm that much more detailed with what I'm doing, and I'm more attentive. My brain's clear. I feel like I have more energy. And then when I come home from work, like I got energy. My kids want to go play on the tramp. Like I can go do that, and it feels great. So you start to see, I mean, I have testimonials all day of just like, I won't say I helped. Like one person said, I can have kids now. And I'm not saying that that's what will happen, right? There's no guarantee there, but I'm just saying the way they start to change these habits and implement them into their life. And I help them stay on track, and then they get to reap all the benefits from it. And so seeing that is just, I mean, like I could do that all day.
Yeah. What's been the most well, I don't know if the question is what's been the most challenging about this venture, or what's been the biggest surprise that you didn't foresee, but it was certainly a surprise or a challenge that you had to work through? Anything come to mind?
Yeah. Like I underestimated how hard like creating content is, and just making, because you have to create it and then edit it and then make sure it actually looks good. Because a lot of times, like you said, like you start creating content, you're like, oh, I'm so proud of myself because I was able to put myself out there and I started talking. But if no one likes it, no one's going to watch it, or no one cares if it's not good, right? They don't care that you put yourself out there. That's just, it's social media. It's cutthroat that way. And so underestimating like how much content, but that's one of the biggest levers in it as well is, I gotta, we go on vacation, but it's like that. If I stop with creating content, like everything else stops. And so, the more that I can figure out how to build a system around that is what's, I mean, it's the hardest thing for sure still to this day, but it also produces the most. It's the biggest lever in it all.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. It's just cool, man. I mean, you're blessed. How many clients, like, how many people have you helped? I mean, it sounds like people from all over the world. I mean, I don't know if you want to share that or not, but it feels like you're certainly helping a lot of people, and that's got to just be so cool in
Yeah.
general.
I mean, I've helped over, I mean, I don't know the number, but I know a couple months ago it was like 800. I kind of hit my and
Wow.
then 1,000. So it's just like, I mean, it's pretty cool to be able to connect. And I talk with dads every single day, and you
Hmm.
start, really connect. And there's other ways, like sometimes it's a good fit, sometimes it's not. But the cool thing about social media is you're connecting with people who are in current situations and similar, have similar passions and values that you do. And so you kind of build this community that are like-minded people that are all striving for the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, like, how do I best articulate this? I almost think of like fitness as an ultra marathon in the sense that, so I can give you I guess I'll give you this analogy. When I read the first Goggins book, I went from not running, I was in a bad place. I mean, not a bad place, but like fitness wasn't a priority, and we had kids and life. And I went from like 0 to a 50 miler in a year, and I got injured. And then I was really sad about that because I fell in love with trail running, and then I got into ice hockey, and it kinda healed my knee up, and then when I did this last 100, it was just very slow, build a base, be very slow, and then you start to just add until you can get to the starting line and finish. And I'm just curious, like, I find that in an ultra run or in life, like, everyone gets to the starting line, but you start lifting and you get really sore, or people go out of the gate too hard and then they get discouraged, or they get out, they start and then they're looking at their weight and it's just they're not losing the weight that they want to, and they end up wanting to quit. And from a coaching perspective, or, a mental health perspective, or just like what would you say to someone that might just be so down on themselves, and they start and then they quit, and they start and then they quit, and they don't feel like they're present, they don't feel healthy? What would you say to that individual that's listening right now that just needs to just take smaller steps, and what kind of encouragement could you give them?
Yeah. Start with one thing. Find one win that you can win at, however small that is. I mean, I love that you brought up ultra running, and I know you did that 100 miler, and I've done a few different ultras. I haven't, done as much as that. I've paced my brother in 100, and there always comes a point where, it's like, how far is that aid station? Like, what? And it seems so daunting, and you don't know how you're even going to come. You got another 20 miles to go, and you're like, how do you comprehend that? And what's always gotten me through it is just you break it up. Like, you got to say, okay, one step at a time. And that's something that I've always repeated in my head. You just take one step forward. Okay, what's this next step forward? And That's honestly, you start small with those little steps, and that's how you build momentum. That's how you're going to start to build energy and get you through. So it's like I have a client that's like, I fell off the wheel, man. I'm stressed at work. My family life is crazy right now. We just had a baby. There's all these obstacles and things working them against them. And so let's just pick one thing. All right. Can you hit your protein today? Let's just start there. Let's start with one win. Can you do 20 push-ups? Like, if you can't do, like, a lot of times for me, it's like I miss, the whole day is just booked up. And so a lot of times it's like, okay, I got 5 minutes. Let's see how many push-ups I can do in 5 minutes. You can't tell me you don't have 5 minutes,
Mhm.
right? But what it does to
Yeah.
your mental brain is it's crazy how you can feel like you're winning again, even though you went the whole day and you were just getting, yelled at by your boss and, you can name a list of things, but you start to create one little win and it's crazy what that does to your mental. So to me, I harp on it. It's just like, just pick one thing that you can win at. And it's amazing how that will pull somebody out of that loop.
Yeah, well, you're talking about mental toughness and mental, I'll call it mental fitness. I don't even know if that's a term, but like I'm curious from your perspective, when a dad wakes up and he wakes up before his kids, he can get right after it and get in the gym, and he can think about his mental health, and then he can think about his spiritual health. In your coaching, in your life, do you prioritize one of those over another as you think about your day? Or what have you learned about the importance of combining physical with spiritual with kind of mental?
Yeah.
And how do you approach that in your coaching? Any thoughts around it?
I mean, yeah, no, that's a good question, and I probably don't have the best answer for it. I know what I do, and I know it helps me starting my day off with God. First thing that I do when my feet hit the ground is like, okay, let's thank God for we get to live another day, right? And starting with some gratitude as far as I'm alive. I get to move my body. That's a blessing. And I think sometimes we get caught up in I got to hit these certain goals, but it's just like you're living, man. This is cool. And then I move. I move my body. You got to move your body. You got to show up for yourself, and that's how you're going to, be able to show up better for others. And that to me, it's kind of that mental, they go hand in hand in a way, because if I can start the day with a win, I mean, it's funny. I feel like I'll go to work or something stressful will happen later in the day. And a lot of people are all like, they get really stressed out but I just went through just a grueling 45-minute workout, whatever that may be, whether it's on treadmill or the weight room. And I feel like my stress levels they're balanced. And so to me, it kind of goes hand in hand a bit is like you wake up, you have some gratitude, some time with God, you go move your body, and it sets you up for that mental space to really be in a healthy spot. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking that, and I appreciate your answer. Some people are like, put God first and fitness second. I don't disagree with that, but I also feel like when I'm dialed physically, then I am emotionally more balanced. I do feel like there's a sense of giving back to God because I am taking care of my body, and I do feel like I'm a better dad and husband when I'm dialing my fitness in. And I think nowadays being able to listen to scripture in the car or even being able to pray while you drive. I mean, I do that occasionally. Being able to just like after the gym, oftentimes like I'll get on my notes and I'll just kind of talk to an app and just kind of get all my spiritual thoughts out. And so I think everyone's different. I'm curious, like when you think about your life and your relationship with Jesus Christ and God, what are you most grateful for when it comes to your spiritual fitness or spiritual relationship with those two? And how are you kind of maintaining? I mean, how are you developing a relationship or continue to develop a relationship with Jesus Christ?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll be the first to say, like, there's a lot of ways that I need to grow spiritually. I think it's an ongoing battle. I think what the reality we live in, there's a lot of influence, a lot of information, and it's easy to get sucked up in it. And I definitely have a lot of ways to to improve. But I would say the one thing I've always been grateful for is having that direct line with my Heavenly Father, with God, having a communication with him on an ongoing basis. I may not be the most dialed and know everything in the scriptures, but I always try to have a prayer and that direct line with him. And I felt like, when I go and do these, I don't know, anything in life, when it gets hard, it gets tough, and having that just keeps me grounded. It keeps me level, keeps me in a good headspace where I feel like there's hope. I feel like there's a lot to be, I don't have to fear the future. And I know that I'm, a child of God. And I think knowing that really just allows me to feel like, you know, I could lose everything tomorrow, but having that knowledge, know that I'm a child of God, I always know he's going to be with me and whatever happens. And that honestly has been, my saving grace as I try to navigate life in general as a dad, as, an entrepreneur, just being a good person in general.
I'll never forget moving into your apartment and, you were just always so dialed in that space. And I was relatively new from the mission too, but you were always a good example of that, man. And I've got a couple more questions. I think my first question is if someone's interested in getting a fitness coach and they hear this podcast, why, to your point, it's competitive. There are a lot of coaches. There's a lot of ways to go about fitness. What would you say is why should they reach out to you, Jentz Painter, from Utah? And what will you commit to them? Because
Yeah.
I'm hoping someone will listen. That's like, why you, brother? I mean, I think I know, but like, why you? If you
Yeah.
jump it down in a couple sentences.
In a couple sentences, huh? Well, why me is I'm living it. Like, I'm a busy dad. I have 3 kids. I have a newborn. I'm up during the night, and I'm busier than I've ever been. But this is my health. It means something to me, and I try to be the best I can living that life. And I know how much it's blessed my life. I don't have a perfect life, but I know how much it's blessed my life. And I think there's a lot of coaches out there that they know how to speak, they can articulate whatever, but it doesn't always translate to living it, right, and being that example. And so to me, I'm in the thick of it. I'm right there with you, as if I was, running on the treadmill with you, supporting you along the way, because we're going through it together.
It's cool, man. I love that. Fires me up. I really want to I want to get on the single track with you. I won't be able to keep up with you, but my next question is, I think I always like to shout out the entrepreneur on the pod that is married and has a spouse. Like I want to give you an opportunity to just shout your wife out. Like, what has your wife meant to you from the beginning of marriage to her raising your kids to supporting you, whether it's working for someone or starting your own business? What comes to mind when you think about your wife?
Man, she's the reason I'm here today. Without her, this wouldn't be possible. I mean, your wife is someone, it's the most important decision you'll ever make. And I got lucky. Like, I know, because I'm older now. I didn't know it when I was younger, but when I made the decision. But I truly believe in fate because of that reason, that there is a person out there for you, because, we dated for 3 months and then we were married in 3 months. And you think about that timeline, and to know somebody, right? That's hard, right? But my wife, Audrey, she's way better than I've ever become. Like, the reason I am a fitness person who I am today is because of who she is. Like, she sets the bar really high. She's a competitive athlete. She's constantly driven and working on her health. And then, you know, she wants me to achieve what I want to achieve. And so she doesn't have a timeline, or she's not a deadline like, hey, you better be making X amount of money. She's supporting me in what I want to achieve, and she's letting me do that. And then at home, we have a balance. And so we understand that health is one thing that you can control in your life. You can't control all the other things that come, like kids. Maybe your kid threw up at school and was in your workout time, and you can't control, a new baby waking up, or, your boss yelling at work, but you can't control your health and the time that you give each other. And so me and her, we prioritize that, and we make sure that she has her time, I have my time to make it. count. So it's a team, and I wouldn't be here without her.
Yeah, it's cool, man. My last thing that I'm curious about in thinking about your business and life is I think this life's so beautiful. I mean, the amount of opportunity it sounds like you have, and being a father and a husband and being healthy, having Jesus Christ on your side and God. Like, what are you most excited about in life and why?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I like the adventure part of life. I think that's what draws me, feeling alive. And so I'm not always trying to put a box around what I want, but I really want to have moments with the people that I care about most. And those are my three kids and my wife, making sure that we have moments to share with each other, because those memories are what's going to last forever. So that's really what gets me. I don't have this. I don't need a Ferrari or this massive mansion. I just want to have experiences where we're happy, we're enjoying life, we're fulfilled, overcoming challenges, and supporting. Like that to me is what kind of gets me fired up.
Well, Jens, I appreciate you, brother. And I think I'm curious for someone that's listening that would love to maybe get like an initial, what would you call like the first call? Like I would call it a discovery call, or, if a call for a right fit, or if wants to follow you and just be inspired.
Yeah.
What's the best way to find your content and to learn more about you and build a relationship with you?
Yeah, so we can jump on a call. You can find me on Instagram at Jentz Paint, and then I have an application that we can just fill out a consult call. There's no commitment. It's free. We'll jump on a quick call, kind of figure out your fitness journey, where you're at, how it's showing up for you day to day, and then map out a version that you want to live as. And if I feel like I can bridge that gap and get you there, then I'll kind of go through of what it would look like working directly with me. But if not, if there's a better direction and I can point you in that way, then take it for what it is. Instagram is where I handle most of my communication with people and getting them started.
Awesome. Well, dude, congrats on being just everything, like being present, being healthy, having a family. That's what matters most. And I wish you the best with your business. And I've really enjoyed reconnecting. Thank you so much for being on the pod, and I hope you have a beautiful day, man.
Appreciate you, man, and thank you for having me. It's been fun to connect with you and get connected. I hope to reconnect. I hope this isn't the last time.
For sure, brother.
All
Have a
right,
great day, man.
too. We'll see you.